Peace and welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Folks, we got a great show for you today. Let's talk about the state of the union, how America is on edge, according to President Biden, saying that people in America are really, really down. Let's have a conversation about where we are in this country. Also, let's talk about the Poor People's March that happened over this weekend in Washington, D.C. We're going to be checking with some of the digital organizers of the march to discuss what are the next steps as we're calling for a moral revival in America. Later, let's talk about belief in God. There is a new USA Today poll that came out to say American adults are losing faith in God. We're going to check in with one pastor to give us some insight as to how this is happening and what needs to change. And then later, guess what, folks? Beyonce is coming. Yes, she is. We'll have the conversation. So stay with us. A whole lot is happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend as folks across the country. And this is the first, as we're celebrating Juneteenth as a federal holiday today. But of course, that happened yesterday as the actual date. But I hope that you have been having a fantastic weekend from everything from celebrating or observing rather Juneteenth and Father's Day. Big shout out to all of the fathers out there, father figures, stepfathers. You know who you are. If you're doing great things, if you are making an impact in a person's life as a father figure, then happy Father's Day to you again. Folks, we got to talk about what's happening in this country. President Biden has hit the nail on the head in a recent interview where he said, his recent comments, where he said that American citizens right now are, quote, really, really down. Now, I want to talk about the fact that we are in this place where America is on edge, folks, that there are a number of factors that have led to the place that, as President Biden calls, down, why we are this way. According to CNN, I wanted you to check out what some of the big factors are that we're facing in this country. CNN pointed out this. Here we go. Many key aspects of economic, social, and national life that were once viewed as smoothly running certainties are out of joint. The COVID-19 pandemic, thought it has eased its deadly grip, has left a complicated legacy of challenges that are still disrupting daily life. Some are aggravations, like the more than 800 airline flights canceled on Sunday. Others threaten Americans' economic prospects and sense of safety and well-being, like the growing fears of a recession. Now, let's continue on that. Such an atmosphere is sure to breed new turmoil in a nation seeing widening ideological divides ahead of midterm elections that are likely to cause more dysfunction if power is split in Washington between Republicans and Democrats. And it almost guarantees years of political bickering ahead of the 2024 presidential race, which may hamper the nation's capacity to solve any crisis. Wow. America is on edge. I want to bring in culture crew member today, Mr. Jules P., who is an artist, who is an activist, and who is a brother who is doing some great work in his community, and most importantly, doing the great work of mentoring. Jules, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you, brother. How are you this afternoon?
Doing good.
Jules, when we talk about this, America being on edge, and as I laid out, I mean, you know, that's just a synopsis of some of the big issues, not even to add the fact, Jules, that, you know, there is internal strife within various communities across this country, cultural issues that we're seeing. I mean, these are just the big ticket items, and just the sense that, you know what, I just don't like people. I don't like to be around people. I don't like how people think. Let's not talk about the fact of the impact of technology and social media and how it has shaped the world that we're in and how we see the world. America's on edge, Jules. What's your take on it, bro?
I definitely want to pick up off that last point of the statement that you read, because it's like, the problem that I see is going to be the bickering again between the two parties. That's why I feel like a lot of Americans are on edge, because I feel like there's never going to be a resolution, because one side is going to say one thing in Republican, one side is going to say another thing in Democrat, and it's like it's like a constant argument. So whoever has the idea to fix the problem, this side is going to refute that. And when they have the idea to fix the problem, this side is going to refute that. So it's like we're going to constantly be in this turmoil where nobody's going to come to an agreement on how to fix things. To elaborate more on the different points, I mean, just look at it. Like, we live in this regular day society. Going to the grocery stores is different. Going to the malls are different. I mean, it's no stores in the mall. If you go in the mall, it's like the malls are empty because all the stores couldn't handle the pandemic. The pandemic really crushed a lot of business.
Right.
And then that wears, again, that the new term everybody wants to use, starting from 2020 or 2019, 2020, is like the mental health. Well, that's a thing now, because now people are losing jobs, people have lost jobs, people can't support their families how they used to. So now that changes the consumer, that changes how corporations market business. And it's like now, grocery stores, like, they're not getting products in that you used to be able to get on a regular basis, a consistent basis. Back when the pandemic first happened, remember, we couldn't even get paper towels or toilet paper or Lysol. Like, it just was so much going on at one time. And that was like, well, is this going to be the new America? I mean, literally, that's what has changed. Is like, all right, this is now the new normal. And then it's like, now we get to a point where we're accepting it, but we're not happy with it, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's like, that's literally the state that we're at right now. And then, as a side, I mean, Joe Biden,
we talk about it, man. We know the president. We know the president is struggling right now, to say the least.
Struggling. He couldn't even ride a bike. He couldn't come to a stop on a bike. He fell right off.
And you know what, man? And I hope they say he didn't sustain any serious injuries. I fell off bikes before,
man.
So,
I get it, but it's like, when I seen it, like, because I got the CNN sent the headline. So, again, like you say, technology. It came to my phone. So it said Joe Biden falls off a bike. I'm like, oh man, like, I'm like, dang, like, not the president. Like, you good? Then when I seen the video, I'm like, he came to a complete stop and then tipped over. I'm like, that's America right now. Enough is enough.
Coming to a complete stop and then tip it over.
Like,
that's
we reached
America right now, Jules.
Yeah, we reached our point and we can't take it no more. That's America.
See, that's what. Hey, Keenan, let's throw that quote back up on the screen for me, please, bro. Because I want people to see that. Look at all these issues, but this is the problem. Let's go to the next one, King. Look at this is the last part of this. Thank you. Listen to what CNN is saying. It almost guarantees years of political bickering ahead of this race, this is the part that gets me, Jules, which may hamper the nation's capacity to solve any crisis.
Right.
That's why I wanted us to focus on. That's why I raised this part of the conversation, to focus on any crisis. Like, we're getting to a point in this country where the simple things, like in government, they call it constituent services, right? Mm-hmm. And when that becomes interrupted or disrupted, like we see with the supply chain, getting certain foods in and all of that. I mean, it's one thing to talk about war or the looming threat of war. It's one thing to talk about the recession, but it's another thing when certain constituent services are disrupted. Right. Like, when you can't, if you think about it on a local level, folks, it's like, if you can't get your trash picked up.
Right.
If there is snow, for example, that comes into your area, you can't get snow removal, right? Or you go to a government office, they can't provide you the services. Like, if you are a veteran, they can't provide you with certain services. I mean, or any of the constituent services, right? The things that like this quote mentioned, the things that you're supposed to rely the most on. Big point. We talked about this a couple of years ago, Jules, when the mail situation was all messed up, right? Now, still, it's, the mail, let me just say this, like the post office, according to polls across the country, out of all the government institutions, more people had faith that the postal service was going to continue to operate at a high level than any other government agency. 90% of the people, the American people, had faith in the post office and its ability to do its job. When things start to fall apart, those constituent services, when those things that we often rely on, when they start to fall apart, then it's just a reminder that this place that we're in, the edge that we are on, is here. Right. And that's the thing. Like when you can't, I understood when the pandemic happened, when it first happened, you couldn't get certain supplies. Now we're 2.5 years in.
You still can't get it.
Now I might have to cut. I still can't get certain supplies. And then the stuff that I do have to get, the prices are crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's starting to and now the sense of security is starting to be eroded. The foundation that we all believe is going to be eroded. And that's the part. Like, okay, yeah, we know we got a war. We know we got a recession. We know we got some race issues. But what? I can't get my mail.
Right.
I can't. I gotta spend $15, whereas before I spent $10 on a pack of chicken.
Right.
It's like, oh man, that's when the situation goes. All right, I want to get some of our watchers and folks. Make sure y'all check in, post your comments. Let's hear what you got to say as well. McCole kicked us off today, Jules. McCole, it's always good to hear from you. McCole said, America is on edge. The combination of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, continuous racism, facts, health disparities, right, mass shootings, and random violence, people are fearful.
Right.
Yeah. And guess what? Fear makes you do things out of a space of irrational, right? You know what I mean? Now when you're afraid, you're going to start acting more irrational than when you are not afraid. And that just adds to the edge. Jules, what's your take, bro?
When you're fearful, and this is not even, let's not even talk about, I want to bring up guns, but it's the term trigger happy. And that's not even just talking about using a weapon. That's just talking about life. You make irrational decisions out of fear because now you're trigger happy, because now you're on edge and you're ready to jump and do whatever to try to get out of that space of fear. And that causes you to make even worse decisions. That's daily, day in, day out operations. That's what your job, that's what your home, that's what your kids, that's what anything. You just act off of what the fear is and you're jumping now instead of sitting down, logically explaining, logically reasoning, and then acting on. So, I mean, that was a great point. I mean, the fear part, I think, is what America is really dealing with. And then, like I said, and that's not even bringing up the violence. Like we talked about that for the past couple of shows. It's just the mass shootings. I mean, it was another shooting last night at the Mochella Festival in DC. It's something everywhere. It's just getting out of control.
Absolutely. All right, Nisa 1971 checked in. Nisa, good to hear from you too, sis. Nisa agreed with McCole and said yes, and it's the refusal of white citizens in society to realize that what affects disadvantaged communities affect them too eventually, and now those chickens are coming home to roost. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, right, that and here's the other part of it. I think that we need to note. Culturally, we have always been taught and conditioned to believe that if you have a certain amount of money, if you live in a certain neighborhood, that you would, and I know it doesn't sound rational, but we've been taught that if you have a certain amount of money, if you live in a certain neighborhood, if you work at a certain job, that you will be quote unquote immune to any type of issue, right? Regardless of what city you in. Oh, I live in this neighborhood. We don't get crime. Oh, I do this. This is my job. So I don't understand, I don't experience poverty. But now it's all of those isms, poverty or materialism, racism, sexism, a dysfunctional nationalism, all of those things are seeping into every element, every profession, every neighborhood, every corner of our lives, that now we're all forced to have to deal with this.
Right.
You gotta, you and I and everyone else in this country on, as we have this show, we all are going to have to face the ugly side of injustice and racism and materialism. And we're going to all have to face that. We're going to have to face it. Like, there's no neighborhood that is so safe that you're not going to face something.
Right.
No car that is so smooth or so we're all going to have to face it.
Right.
And that's a hard reality check when in your head and all throughout our lives we've been said you won't have to face it because this is what you do, who you are, how much money you bring in. I don't care if you're LeBron James. You can't ride through LA and close your eyes and say, I don't see the disparity.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't do it. Oh, I'm a doctor. I don't see a broken healthcare system. You can't do it.
Right.
You can't do it. Let's go back to our comments. Let's go to Belinda. Belinda, it's good to check in with you, sis. Belinda checks in and said, look, Biden showed he's not balanced in life or at work. Our well-being depends on him not riding those damn Republicans out. I like how you did that, Belinda.
I like how she did that.
I like how she did that. She just made that analogy. Hey, see the Biden might have too much. Hey, Joe, Biden got too much faith, man. I'm serious. And maybe it's just because of me. And you can correct me, bro. I don't know if you're at this place, but maybe it's just me. As I get older, they always attribute Maya Angelou with that saying that if a person is show you who they are, believe them. Mm-hmm. After a while, you start to be like, Dr. Angelou was on to something.
Right.
Because I can't see your intentions until they express through actions. And if your actions show that they're against my interest, then I have to believe your intention is against my interest. You can't be like, oh, I made good intentions and I'm going to hurt you. And then expect me to be like, no, that's cool. You hurt me. But your intentions lead to your actions. So if somebody show you who they are, you got to believe them. If the Republicans are saying, no, the intention is to save America, but everything you're doing is disempowering to the citizens of America, I got to go with your actions, bro. I can't, your well-intentioned, your good intention, I can't bank on that. I can only bank on your policies. I can only bank on what I see you do.
Right.
Is that crazy?
No, but I have a question.
Yeah,
and focusing on your point and focusing on her comment. Is Biden overwhelmed? Are we not talking about that enough?
Is he overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's 2 years into his term. We're seeing all the problems that he's trying to recover from the previous administration, then all the new problems that's going on in this current administration, and then the fact of his age and his health. Trying to do this. Is he overwhelmed? Are we looking at a president that is just, he ain't saying it, but we see he's a regular American living in a time where this is too much at one time. He's living in fear. He's overwhelmed. He can't deal with it.
Hey, Jules.
And he's not saying it.
Jules, that's why you my guy, man. I think we gotta say what it is. Anybody in that seat, in this moment, in this day and time, would have to say, "Oh, this is too much."
Right.
I mean, look. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the issue. The real issue is we expect Biden to be Superman, or some of us, not all of us, of course, right? We expect any political leader to be Superman or Superwoman, and then we're like, when they don't meet that expectation, we get disappointed. Why can't you? I mean, think about it. What school has prepared you for a war across the seas, a recession, a pandemic you still ain't got a full management of, right? Racial issues that the country has yet to fully address, right? So they're leaving it. And then your administration is always going back and forth. You got these Republicans, you got these Democrats. Like, there's no school that has prepared you for that.
Right.
There's no, like you could be like, well, I've been in public service for 40 years. That may give you some experience or some know-how. But if there, and every president, there's nothing that has prepared you for the, like you said, bro, the onslaught of crisis. It's like crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis. And we gotta, as I think part of the issue is, as Americans, as citizens of this country, we have to say this, we have to come to the point that we're like, you know what? It's unrealistic to expect this man to carry the weight of it all. We got to do something. As citizens, we got to do something.
Yeah,
because you're right, bro. I think we're overwhelmed. I think, again, going back to what CNN said, it all hampers our capacity to solve any crisis.
Right.
That's where we're at. Is it possible? Let me add to your question, bro, as we wrap up. Is it possible that the crises are above the capacity of the American government?
Now
is that possible?
I think yes.
Can the American government, as we have it at this moment, and as it stands, and based upon our current relationship with our government, can we truly expect the United States of America, the government of this great country, right? And I'm saying that, I'm being for real. Can we truly expect them to solve all of these problems on its own?
Right.
Without the help of people, of the citizens?
Right. Man, that's a great, you know what? That now changes the trajectory of what we're looking for in government now. Because, when we were younger, we were voting for political candidates to fix and solve issues. But like you said, when the issues are crisis after crisis after crisis, pounding and pounding and pounding, it's like one person can't logically fix everything at one time. I'll give you an example. When you stated the fact of, there's no school that teaches this, it's messed up because, say, for instance, racism was the problem. So say I want to go to school for 4 years. I want to study criminal justice. I want to become a lawyer or a prosecutor, or whatever, and fight that issue. But as soon as I get to that point, boom, the pandemic happened. So that changes the course of everything going on in America. So what I fought so hard to get to, that's not even the main issue anymore. And then once we started to adapt to the pandemic, boom, then war happens. And then after we started getting close to, all right, let's figure out what's going on in the world, then boom, the economy. It's like you said, it's just so much at one time. It's like we were not prepared for this. And there's not one person that can solve this. It has to be a collective effort, whether it's government, whether it's local government, whether it's community. It has to be some effort that's placed upon a certain group of people, a certain task, or a certain coalition of people that can deal with these type of issues where we have identifiers. Because I know governments have different, parties and committees that handle different issues in different sectors. But at the same sense, it's like, hey, that's where that needs to be a combined effort instead of always, at the end of the day, letting the president speak, because that's perception now that the president is solving the issues, not knowing behind the scenes there's different boards and coalitions and committees working on these same issues.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head, bro. I think if we are honest and truthful, the United States government can't handle this.
Right.
Now, Does that mean that all is lost? I'm a true believer in people power.
Right.
I'm a true believer in people power. If the United States government doesn't take the necessary action to change its course, i.e., empower the citizens, right?
Right.
Like this administration can get to work empowering people. I think that's one of the big things as we close. One of the big things that attracted so many people to President Obama than to any other president, he made us feel like we were a part of the solution.
Right.
He made us feel like we were a part of the solution. And as a result of that, community involvement increased. More people got more engaged in government. But he made us feel like, one, that hope was present, and that in order for us to be a better country, that we can become better people. And as a result of becoming better people, we can become more engaged citizens.
Right.
That's what I think is missing now. We don't need to have an Obama-esque style leadership because we've had that for 8 years. What we need to do, I think, is to dig deep in ourselves to say enough is enough, and to say, I don't need somebody to come and rile me up. I need to rile myself up because this is the right time and the right thing to do. And this is really the only way. I mean, look, there's no outside foreign entity, government agency that's going to help this country. The big factor in turning this country around is the American people.
Right.
If no other institution says enough is enough, the American people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, Native Americans, on all other groups that are in the boundaries of this country, if no other institution says we can help, the American people says, I need to step up and I'll do this and we'll do this ourselves.
Right.
We have lost the faith in each other. And as a result, the leadership has lost faith in its ability to serve us. Come on, man. It's a hard pill.
Right.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but this is reality. This is where we are, but it doesn't have to stay this way.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's right
Look,
now.
We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation in another space, because this past weekend, there was the Poor People's March that took place, the March for Moral Revival in this country, that was led by Reverend Barber and so many dynamic folks. Let's talk about what happened at that march. We're going to have that conversation up next. So stay with us. A lot to get to as we kick in the second 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Verizon just gave us all a brand new iPhone 13.
We've been customers for years.
We got iPhone 13s too.
Switched 2 minutes ago, literally right before this.
iPhone 13 on us on any unlimited plan for every customer, with plans starting at just $35. All on the network more people rely on.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back. This weekend was a very, very powerful weekend, not just because of the observance of Juneteenth or Father's Day, but this was also the weekend that was chosen to serve as a call to action for the moral revival of the country. This call to action was led by a group of citizens, Black, white, Asian, Latinos, a cross-section of citizens that said enough is enough. It's time for us to speak out against the issues of poverty and racism, and time to call America to a place of moral revival. This was a great march that was led by Reverend William Barber. However, Reverend Barber wasn't the only one that was on the ground. There were young people across the country that had joined in this call. And we're happy to have a conversation with just a couple of the folks that helped to make that march on Washington a high success. We are joined now by Keyshawn Pearson, who serves as the National Digital Director for the Poor People's Campaign. And of course, we'll still have our conversation with our Culture Crew member, Jules P. Keyshawn, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm still feeling elated from this weekend and being around so many great people all on one accord. I think there's something about the synergy and just having so many different people raising so many different flags in support of what their causes are, whether it's ecological devastation and climate groups, or it's union groups who want livable wages for employees across the country. But us all coming together in one space, lifting and chanting the same songs and fighting for the same fight, which is justice and liberation for us all.
Yeah.
That still has me with somewhat of a glow. I feel determined. I feel encouraged more than anything.
Hey, look, brother, first and foremost, my heart and my spirit was certainly there with y'all in D.C. I could not make it. Of course, our big brother, Roland Martin, the curator and founder of Black Star Network, was there to provide the coverage. And folks, I highly recommend that you go back onto blackstarnetwork.com to see all of the great conversations Brother Roland had. But, you know, one of the things that attracted me to, you know, just being able to just talk about this, brother, first and foremost, is that as much as we talk about climate change, we could talk about, you know, education and healthcare, and we could talk about, you know, the disparity in law enforcement, all of those things. The big thing, and I hope many people don't miss this, is that you're talking about a moral revival. You're talking about something that is quote unquote intangible, but it is so intrinsically important, because if you don't have the morality, you can't even speak about justice. You can't even talk about equity. You can't even talk about any level of liberation, because your mind, your heart, and your spirit is just not in the right place to do that.
That's exactly right. And so in the movement, we don't focus on left versus right. We don't focus on red versus blue. What we focus on is what is morally correct, what is morally the best thing to do for everyone, right? Everyone has a right to live, is what we believe in. And that's everyone has a right to living wages. Everyone has a right to clean air. Everyone has a right to clean water. And so anything that tries to obstruct or keep people away from clean water, livable wages, that's what we need to fight together in unity against, right? And so often we are siloed or separated by divisive tactics where they tell you we're limited, so we can only focus on climate, or we can only focus on social injustice, or we can only, and it's not one thing, it's everything. These are all interlocking injustices that we have to address simultaneously. So in addressing these simultaneously is the only way we can all together get free. What we say in the movement is when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Not when you lift from the middle or when you lift from the top. When you lift from the bottom is when everybody rises.
And you know what, Keyshawn, I'm glad you brought that up, because you're talking about real power, having the ability to lift from the bottom. And I've heard, and I've listened to Reverend William Barber, and I've heard some of the other speakers, and I was like thinking to myself, man, that is the real struggle, right? Because there are only there's the small number of folks at the top that are controlling the resources, the overall vision for this country. How do we start to lift from the bottom, especially when you're talking about a constituency in this country that, one, that may not care, or two, they don't see their own power, and three, may not be knowledgeable about the time that we're living in, the seriousness of the crises that we're facing. How do you start that lift?
You start that lift by information. The difference between those who operate at a different level and those who don't is having access to that information. And so one thing that the Poor People's Campaign does is we work together with environmental study groups, policy study groups, and we create information in the form of reporting. And so we recently released a COVID report that showed the disparity in the deaths based on location. So based on your zip code, based on the poverty level there, they experience more loss, 4 times more loss than wealthier zip codes. We have the Souls of Poor Folks, where we examine how disconnected the poverty calculations are that are currently being used and how outdated they are. There are currently over 140 million people in the United States that are one incident away from poverty. And that amount being less than a $400 or $200 inconvenience would actually throw them into poverty. And this was before the pandemic. So after the pandemic, we expect that those numbers have even worsened. And so I think having access to that information is one of those things. But I actually want to bring my brother, Justin J. Pearson, on and he will elaborate on just a couple other things that we believe will help lift from the bottom.
Hey, well, let me do this. While we bringing Justin on, I want to play just a few minutes from some of the remarks from Reverend William Barber, man. And again, Keyshawn, I am in full support, man. This is so necessary. I'm a student of the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so, I understand the necessity for a gathering like this. So, and then, we'll certainly talk about this, but you being a young Black man on this front line, on this space, right?
Yes, sir.
This is, we talked to Brother Ruquan last week, another brother who was organizing, another Black brother who was organizing some work for the March for Our Lives. It's so empowering to see young brothers in these spaces that are making these intentional choices to say, you know what, I'm young, but my life can't be fulfilled or can't be a full life until I, totally submit myself to a cause bigger than myself. Right. So, you know what I mean?
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, bro, go ahead.
I just want to, and this is just a plug, because one thing that we definitely want to do is grow and advocate for more people to join us. This doesn't work. The work doesn't become impactful, and it can't grow into what we need in order to actually create sustainable change, right? And so one thing I wanted to add before I go is if you would like to join us, we need every single person. So if you have the time, Just use your phone. We want to make it as simple as possible, and just text MORAL to 38542. So that's text moral to 38542, and we will help you get connected with a state campaign that we have who is actively doing this work in your state. And so we need you, we need you, we need you.
Hey, look, brother, we're going to put that information out again at the end of this conversation. I know you only had a few minutes, and in a moment, we'll bring your brother Justin into this conversation. But Keyshawn, on behalf of us here at The Culture on Black Star Network, thank you so much for your time, and keep up the great work. And we'll certainly circle back to you, brother.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. Folks, I want y'all to hear some of the remarks from Reverend William Barber as we just want you to hear a couple of minutes, and then we'll bring in the co-league, Justin Pearson, into this conversation, as well as our culture crew member, Jules P. Check this out.
To the stage, my good friend Roland Martin and us often talk. You can't have a meeting like this and not have a strategy for after the meeting. That'd be foolish. So let me tell you what we're going to do after the meeting. Number one, we demand that all congresspersons in the United States publicly acknowledge the reality and pain of 140 million poor and low-wealth people and stop lying and saying that it's only 39 million people. Number two, we demand every congressperson commit to creating and supporting legislation that reflects a third Reconstruction agenda. Now, we haven't heard, and I don't know what the problem is. I know the phones work and the emails work. So let me say it here. We demand, come on, Liz, we demand a White House Poverty Summit with President Biden to allow this administration to meet with a delegation of poor and low-wealth people, religious leaders, and economists now. Number four, the campaign will engage in massive mobilization and outreach through every means available to us. Number five, we pledge to return to Washington, D.C. in September and bring 5,000 poor and low-wealth people and religious leaders and 100 economists in a nonviolent direct action to walk all day in the halls of Congress. We won't be silent anymore. And today, this campaign announces its launch of a nationwide effort for the next 143 days to register and educate poor and low-wealth communities to vote in every election for candidates that commit to addressing poverty and low wage. And number seven, we declare that we are a movement that votes, a movement that fights, a movement that marches, a movement that uses nonviolent truth and love, and a movement that ain't never going nowhere no time soon.
If you ain't inspired by that, let's bring in our culture crew member, Jules P., Mr. Jules. And let's also bring in co-lead of the Poor People's Campaign, Justin Pearson. Justin, thank you again for okay, we don't have Justin, but let's talk a little bit about this. All right, he got him. We got him now. All right, we got Justin in here. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, brother?
It's my honor. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm doing well. It's good to see y'all.
Absolutely. Justin, let me just say this, brother. When you talk about this call, I'm just inspired. Reverend William Barber, man, he always he says it in a way that gets you pumped up. You know what I'm saying? He says it to get you pumped up. But this call, this strategy, especially he talks about creating a conversation around the White House. And Jules, we can talk about this. And I know Justin's going to join us back in. But Jules, with hearing what he said, first acknowledging the fact that it's not 39 million, it's 140 million people that are impacted. Very quickly, Jules, what's your take on that? The numbers matter in this case.
That's why I always try to figure out when government states these numbers. Where y'all getting your information from? Because the people have the number on the forefront. We're the ones living in the number. So where are you getting your numbers from? That was my first takeaway. As soon as he said 39 million, I'm like, it's impossible. 39 million is such a low ball
Right.
number. It's
Right.
a low ball number.
Right. 39 million to 140 million. And Justin, you know, you're doing work in Memphis, you're doing work all across the country. Let's talk about that. That makes a difference. That brings the conversation into a much bigger context and priority. 39 million, you'd be like, okay, there are 320 million people. But when you say 140 million, now we're talking about impact.
Right. We're talking about nearly half the country not being able to ensure that their children have enough to eat at night. We're talking about people who are one paycheck away from being in need of housing or in need of welfare in order to survive. When we look at the numbers in reality, we know that the breadth of the problem is much more grand than the federal government statistics. When you're looking at the numbers, let's just use this and say, for instance, 39 million, which the federal government uses, and use the number, say $20,000, right, is what would fit underneath that cap. That means somebody who's making $20,000 and one is no longer poor, right? Our statistics are used in such a way that does not encompass the reality of the expenses of surviving in this country, nor the reality of what it means to be self-sustaining and self-sufficient. We're telling people they have to work hundreds of hours a week just to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the United States of America. We're telling people that you can go to college, have over $100,000 worth of debt, and somehow you are living the American dream. We are really creating policies that ensure poverty, and we're perpetuating the systems of inequality that allow for some people to be billionaires and worth hundreds of millions of dollars, or we have other people in our country who are unhoused. And I use that definition because it's a really important one. It's not just people who don't have access, who are living on the streets. I'm talking about people who are having to live with relatives, people who are couch surfing, of which there are millions of people in our country who are unhoused, who don't have a permanent place where they can actually call housing, because of the amount of rent that we have, and because of the literally strangling, slow lynching, slow violence of poverty in our country. And the numbers do matter, and having a larger number also means that we need to have much more aggressive policies that address the issues. It's so easy for folks to talk about having hundreds of billions of dollars going to war, and yet once we start talking about how do we get billions of dollars going to solve the issues of poverty, of economic inequality, of ending systemic racism within our systems, then people are like, well, how much is it going to cost? We have to reframe our paradigm in this country about what do we want to live in, and is that a society of a beloved community, or is it one that prefers war and prefers the profiting off of the exploitation of people economically through this capitalistic system?
And one of the big things, Justin, that comes to my mind is that before we even can talk about policy, before we even can talk about, you know, the allocating money anywhere, there has to be an admission by the United States government. There has to be an admission by the political leadership. There has to be an admission by the people, the American people, that this system has intentionally forgot the poor. This system, even though the system is built on the backs of the poor of this country, that this system traditionally and historically don't care about the poor. And I feel like if President Biden, and I don't know if he's going to do this, Justin, so, you know what I mean, we're going to just walk down the lane of hypotheticals here, right? If President Biden said, you know what, we don't care about the poor in this country, and start the conversation around poverty with the real number of 140. I just looked it up. The census said that the 2020 census said that there are 331 million people in this country. So if you think about that, and I saw your quote, your post, Brother King Lee, talking about 330 to 350. Yeah, like if you think about that, we're in trouble. You could not possibly have a country that can sustain itself and be able to have the capacity to solve all these crises if nearly half of the country is one incident, as your brother said, one incident away from poverty. How is that going to happen? There has to be an admission. There has to be some real soul searching that this country needs to do, and the American people will have to do. What type of hope or faith do we have that that will possibly happen?
You're spot on in your thinking here. There has to be a period of reflection, right, that acknowledges the gravity of the problem and how we got here,
Right.
before you have a true spirit of repentance. Because ultimately, that is the moral crisis that our country is in. It is that we have strayed away from a belief that we have a responsibility and accountability to those who have been made least, those who have been made lost, those who have been made poor through these systems of injustice and inequality. And we,
Yeah.
as Black people, as poor and low wealth white people, we know that the system of racism in and of itself, created over 400 years ago, was with the intention to divide the power of people
Right.
who were low wealth. It was intended to divide the power of people who were poor and who were being marginalized by who? By people in positions of power, by people who had the wealth, by people who had the prestige, by people who had the pedigree. And today we're just seeing that continuously replicated and replicated and replicating. And so when we think about a moral revival, part of it has to recognize that there is a right and a wrong way that our society is operating. That there is a right and there is a wrong. And we know that it is wrong that people are choosing whether or not they're going to have housing or medical care. It is wrong that in Lowndes County, Alabama, and across the country, people can't flush their toilet and know that it's going into a septic tank. Instead, it's going out into sewage ponds and out into people's front yards. We know that's wrong today in the United States, that this is happening. We know that it's wrong that schools are more segregated today than they were in the 1960s, and that we have fewer voting rights today than we did in the 1960s after the Voting Rights Act passed. We know that there is a right and a wrong, but until we reach this point, and that is part of the call of the Poor People's Campaign and the movement for justice that we're all a part of at this moment in American history, is to say that we have to take stake of where we are. And if we don't acknowledge where we are, then it is very hard to have vision for where we really need to go. And a prophetic vision requires us to reflect, right? And you all may know this, but the African tradition, there's a very important term, and it comes with an image called Sankofa, right? Like you have to turn back in order to know where you're going, and we have to turn back. We have to say that this nation was built on the genocide of indigenous people, First Nations people, Native Americans in this country. An entire country was built off the killing of people in their own land, and then the enslavement of people from the western coast of Africa, right? And we built this entire capitalistic system off the exploitation of people's very bodies, human beings, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, right, relatives. We sold human beings and called them capital. And then we built institutions like Bank of America. We built institutions like many of our insurance companies that are still around today, in order for us to perpetuate this system of injustice. And we have never reconciled that reality, right, of where we've come from to the situation we're currently in. Black folk and white folk who are poor have been living in a pandemic and an epidemic of economic strangulation for centuries.
Come on, brother.
This inequality has persisted for about 40 plus years with neoliberalism, right? That have allowed those who are the most wealthy amongst us to continue to gain riches while they kept wages down for everybody else. People became billionaires by stealing the labor of people who were poor. And so, to your point, it's very hard to be optimistic or have hope, although I'm an eternal optimist. I'm forever hopeful because my faith calls me to be. But it is in conjunction with this realism that a country that refuses to acknowledge and repent of its sins that it commits every single day, from enslavement through to mass incarceration and the separation of children at borders, cannot be separated from the separation of human beings from their voting rights because they were incarcerated because they had marijuana that now really rich people are making $1 billion off of, right? We can't separate these things. These communities that are the most polluted are also the communities where the people are the most poor, and also the communities where they said your money is going to come from your tax base for your schools. And so your schools are underfunded because your tax base is lower, because we redline you into communities where just so happen to be the most polluters are. And so we're going to shorten your lifespan through the act of slow violence and slow lynching. There's an intersection of issues. And so where does my hope derive? It does not derive from people in positions of power being transformed. In fact, it's people who are having a change of conscience who've been oppressed. I really believe that it's the movement of those of us who are oppressed that are going to break the shackles of this American system. I think it is those of us who choose a social location. See, I had the good privilege, thanks to my grandmothers and my family, to go off to college and get a little schooling. And there are a lot of us in that position. And we have the opportunity to either choose one path that takes us out of the community. You can choose a path that separates us from the realities of oppression in our own neighborhoods, or we can choose to say, I am going to have a social location with the oppressed and the marginalized and the excluded. And I think it is imperative upon all of us to choose a social location with those who've been excluded. And if we do that, if we get close, if we get proximate, we can transform this country. And that's where I believe the movement for justice is going.
Let me just say, brother Justin, you right on it. Brother.
Keep kicking.
You right on it. You right on it. Jules, he on it.
He on it. Spot on. Word for word. Spot. That's what I'm like. He got it.
You on it, brother.
Together.
And I thank God for you, man.
Thank
God. I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I thank God for you and your brother and all the folks that you're working with, the young leaders that you're working with, man, because a lot of people, you know, they counted us out.
Come on.
You got 3 black men on this conversation talking about how do we save our people, and having a very different conversation as much as we're talking about saving our people, brown people of this country, the poor, the disenfranchised, and as much we're talking about saving America. You see what I'm saying? Now we can't rescue America from the destiny that she's headed toward. She's going to have to save herself, but we can do our part to save others from not following her in that same destiny. We don't have to go down. And you know, you talking about being the eternal optimist. I think I'm right there in that respect, brother, because I don't believe that if this country is going in a crazy direction that we should just go along to get along. We passed those days, man. We passed those days. And too much is at stake for us as black people in this country, and as for us, for the rest of this country. Too much is at stake. We can't just say, oh man, F it. I ain't going to do this no more, man. I ain't doing this. Like, too much is at stake. I got children. There's another generation that's coming up behind us. Too much is at stake. So I'm happy to hear that y'all are in this space. And I know we don't have a lot of time to come back to talk about this, but Justin, first and foremost, let me just share, you and your brother are always welcome to be on this platform, brother. So don't ever think that you can't just shoot me a text and say, hey, Farajii, you know, we got something that we're cooking right now. Can we come on? Because this is your space. But just know, man, like this is a serious situation, and people got to understand that the poor, that's the people. If you don't treat those without, if you don't treat those who lack, how are you going to talk about you are a country of humane intentions if you don't even treat the poor with respect and dignity? And then on the other side of that is that the poor can't see itself as being weak. If we organize and mobilize, like Dr. William Barber said, we organize and mobilize, man, we can make the changes that we want. We just got to wake up. We got to wake up. Your brother put it out there. Text moral to 38542. What's the next step for this process, Brother Justin, as we talk about this moral movement, this call to action?
Yeah, I just want to articulate one thing. You affirm one thing that you said so well, right? The power of the pyramid, right, is at the bottom. It is the people who are at the bottom. It's more of us than it is of them, right? Their ideologies have trickled down and have infected some folks to the detriment of the movement for a long time. But scales are falling off of people's eyes, and it is the folks who are low-wage workers. It is the folks who have been excluded for so long that you have a home in the movement, right? And the reality is, if we get the folks at Starbucks to get together and the Dollar Generals to get together, if we get the folks at the Walmarts to get together, and we get the folks who are the cleaning workers at the hospitals together, it's more of us
More of us, I swear.
than it is of them.
Come on.
It's more of us who know that we deserve clean air, clean water, clean soil. It's more of us who know that you shouldn't have to sell your car in order to pay a hospital bill. It's more of us than it is of them. And we've got a prime opportunity, particularly in this decade, in my opinion, to change the course of American history. It's already changing a lot, but we've got to change the course of American history to be more inclusive, because everybody's got to be in. Because liberation, I know I'm running out of time, and I apologize to the producers. Liberation has to be for everybody. Liberation has to be for Black folk, and it has to be for queer folks. It's got to be for poor white folks and poor Black folks and Native American folks. We've got to get liberation for everybody, because only when we are all actively working to get free, we'll be able to set this country free. And there is a spirit that we inherited from ancestors who were in systems of bondage, who still chose the freedom of the human spirit. And it is more powerful than their money. It's more powerful than their politicians. It is a lifetime commitment to persist in spite of the system and despite what they are doing to us that got us here. And so if they survive that, then certainly we can survive this system in order to push this society to be a better one. That's the work. And so we need folks to text moral to 38542, but also go to poorpeoplescampaign.org. Read some of the research and the literature. We're going to get you attached to a local campaign, a state campaign, because we're going to push at the county commissions, at the city councils. We're going to push at the state levels in order to change policies. And I know I'm in a red state, and people don't think a lot can change there. But let me tell you, there are a lot of poor folks. In fact, 60% of the people who are under the poverty line in Tennessee are white. Right? We've got to get people to see that their best self-interest actually isn't whiteness perhaps, but maybe it's the liberation of everybody.
That's what I'm
right?
talking
And that's
about.
the message we have to keep pushing. We have to keep putting forward. And by doing so, we will change this country, and we will leave a future better than the one we inherited.
Hey, King Keenan, let's pull up the website very quickly, bro. poorpeoplescampaign.com. Look, folks, I don't know about you, Jules. I'm inspired.
Yeah.
I'm inspired, bro. Justin Pearson, co-lead of the Poor People's Campaign. So many people have been checking in, Justin, and I'm just happy to hear from you and from your brother Keyshawn. And
both honored.
More importantly, bro, you know, you got allies, you got supporters on this side. Black Star Network, yours truly, my man Jules P. Take a look at this, folks. Here's the website right now. Poor People's Campaign, Poor People's and Low Wage Workers Assembly. Great March on Washington. Got my man Keyshawn back in there. There you go. Some of the mobilizing partners, folks. But just go to the website. And I highly, highly encourage you to text MORAL, M-O-R-A-L, to 38542. This is a serious situation. 7 steps before the midterms. A lot of you that have checked into this show, y'all often say, well, what are we need to do? What's the agenda? What's the policy? How what's the next step? There you go. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You ain't got to look back 50 years. 50 years is to serve as a reminder and a point of reference and an inspiration. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The ancestors have already laid out the foundation on how we should move forward. The thing is, whether we have the political and the individual and the spirit to really do what we are compelled, what we need to do. Poorpeoplescampaign.org, text MORAL to 38542. Justin Pearson, Keyshawn Pearson, I thank you, brothers, both for your time with us today. We'll certainly be bringing you back on. Thank you so much, brother, and keep up the powerful work that you both are doing. There we go. There we go. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about America and faith. There is a new poll out that says that American adults have less faith in God. They don't believe in God. We'll be checking in with Pastor Dr. Cecil Gray to give us some insight as to why this is happening. And we got some other trends posts during the most and some other conversations. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. To show the love.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. So excited to have you join us today. If you missed the first hour, make sure that you check it out. I'm telling you, the conversation's absolutely on fire. We first talked about America being on edge based upon the recent comments made by President Biden in his talking, saying Americans are really, really down right now. He couldn't have said it better. And that has led to a number of crises that we are facing and challenged by in this country. So we had a conversation about that. But we also have a very inspiring discussion with 2 powerful young Black leaders that are a part of the Poor People's March, the big march that happened over the weekend, that great march on Washington led by Reverend Barber. And I highly recommend that you check out what Brother Justin and Brother Keyshawn Pearson, both of them had to say. 2 dynamic. I mean, these are biological brothers that are doing fantastic work in the area of social justice, climate change, and just essentially calling on the moral revival of America. So those conversations happened in the first hour. Make sure y'all check out that replay. All right, let's continue the discussion as I've been joined by Culture Crew member Jules P. I wanted to have a discussion about a new poll that came out, Jules, and I think we should be having Pastor Cecil Gray, Dr. Cecil Gray, joining us in a moment. But there was a new poll and I want to pull this up, folks, because I thought this was highly fascinating, given where we are in this country. There's a new poll that says that American adults believe less in God. Check this out. This is a poll that was released Friday by Gallup, shows that 81% of U.S. adults say they believe in God, which is down 6% percentage points from 2017. The poll also found that 17% of U.S. adults say they do not believe in God. Now, between the years of 1944 and 2011, over 90% of Americans said they believed in God, according to Gallup's long-running survey. Jules, I'm going to go to you, then we're going to go to the pastor. But Jules, what do you make of this? You are a spiritual young brother. You grew up in the church. You know what I mean? You have values. You have morals. And there's another part of this I want to throw up there. Keenan, let's throw up that second quote about young people. Y'all, check this out. The organization found that a belief in God has fallen the most sharply among young adults and people who have identified as liberals or Democrats. These groups had a drop of 10 or more percentage points when 2022 figures were compared with an average of the survey results from 2013 to 2017. Jules, are you surprised by this, brother?
I want to attack it from two different points.
All right, go ahead.
The first point I want to attack is, based off of these surveys, like who are the targeted surveys? And the reason I ask that question is because, like you said, like me being faith-based and raised, majority of Black families have that grandmother, that grandfather who has been in the church, who instilled that into them. And so even though we might not go to church on a consistent basis, we still have that faith, that fear of God that's still within us. So it's like, looking at these different surveys, it's like, I want to go deeper dive into the demographics of the backgrounds of where they're getting the actual data and numbers from, because that's definitely a target that I want to focus on, because I do see the drop off in church. Now that could be, due to the pandemic, just cause people to just have a different perception. Also, technology, social media. I mean, you ask Google now for everything. So, and I tell people all the time, Google is not ran by us. So when you ask Google a question, it's not going to give you an answer that you're looking for related to us as well. When I say us, I mean Black people, just to be clear, so everybody knows in the audience. But, when we're asking Google for these faith-based questions or religious questions or moral questions, it's like we're not getting the answers that our grandparents and grandfathers have. I mean, our grandmother, grandfathers, our mothers and fathers have passed down to us, our aunts and uncles have passed down to us, that were the real original teachings. They didn't have social media back then. It was passed on what was taught to them from generational, beliefs and cultural beliefs, and passed on these different religions to each other and passed on to the next generation. So we were able to then focus on who our God was, or who our Savior was, or who we're praising to. And that we're spreading that message and passing on to our next generations. So that's what I want to dive deeper into, because it's like, I see the polls, but I also understand a different aspect of, has it really changed, or are you just polling a certain demographic?
Right. Let me, I want to bring in Pastor Dr. Cecil Contine Gray, who serves as the pastor of the church Northwood Uphold United Methodist Church here in Baltimore. Pastor Gray, we got you on right now, Pastor. All right, Pastor, make sure you turn your camera on so that we can see you in live and in living color, dear brother, because we want to make sure that you're a part of this conversation. Folks, make sure you also are posting your comments on this discussion as well. We'll be getting to those in a quick moment. I see folks I actually have already checked in. So let's go to some of these comments, and then we'll hear from the pastor. Let's go to Doreen Turner. Doreen, good to hear from you, sis. Doreen says, I have faith, but I don't go to church because I don't believe in organized religion. Okay. I think a lot of people in that space, Doreen, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people are just tired of the organized religion, and people want something more authentic, Jules, something that fits them. And we can kind of go back and forth on what that means, because I understand why people are that way. As Jesus said that, those who came before me are a bunch of thieves and robbers. So that has dampened the people's view of faith leadership. You know what I mean? When we talk about that, especially within the Black community, we see the if the reverend drives up in a nice car, we automatically assume he's taking the church money, not knowing that he might actually have a job and that he pastors on a weekend. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that perception and cultural issues that are present. So I understand that. But I think the other part of that, though, Jules, is the fact that we need organized religion. I remember, and I'm sure you heard this when going to church, you can come to God the way you are, but you can't stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some people, we want to have a relationship, and we should, a personal relationship, but God is going to require something from you. You can't, there we got the pastor on. God is going to require something from you. You can't just come to God and be like, God, I'm going to do this on my terms, the way I want to do it. And expect that you're going to get as far along as you can. he's going to require some level of sacrifice and commitment. Let's bring in our pastor. I'm happy that we're joined by our beloved pastor, Pastor Dr. Cecil Gray from the Northwood Uphold United Methodist Church. Pastor Cecil, how are you this afternoon, dear brother?
I'm well. I'm well. Yourself?
I'm good. Pastor, we're talking a little bit about this drop that people have, that they're not quite as hopeful, as faithful. They don't believe in God. You know, the number of people who believe in God has dropped according to this Gallup poll. And the drop is also huge among the next generation, young people, and even gotten more political among liberal Democrats. What do you attribute that to, Pastor?
I think a couple of things. One, science is dominant right now. Science is very dominant, right? People, have more and more education. We have this internet, right? We have the ability to be global immediately. And so when you see the reach of technology, right? It's easy to maybe think that technology is the end all and be all. We've got the technology, all that other stuff, that non-empirical stuff, as you said earlier, that stuff that you can't see, touch, feel, measure. Maybe that really doesn't matter, but it does. And I think something that you're saying earlier about the young people. I think the young people. When these polls, it depends on how the question is asked, right? Because I think the young people. I think they still believe in what I call source, right? And so when you work with young people, you got to watch language, because, and this when many years ago when we were young, right?
Right.
We're flexible with the language. So young people, if you ask them, do you believe in God? You may get a no. They may not even want to be bothered with whoever's taking a poll. But young people, you talk about source, you talk about love, and then be broader. Talk about Nkulu Kulu. Talk about the unified field theory. Talk about Oludumare. Talk about Ja. Talk about Yah. Talk about Wakan Skun. Talk about Amma. Talk about all these other names, these other appellations, right? Relative to how the creator is referred to. And then you discover that so some of the young people I know, they believe in God, but they don't believe in these images, right? They do not believe in many of the images that have come across generations now and even centuries, right? That are historically inaccurate, that are intellectually dishonest, right? They don't believe in that, and they're at an age and a stage and a time in their journey where they're not going to be shy about that. They're not going to be shy about it. They do not believe in people who look like they come out of Europe. When if you look at a map, and if you know something about history, you know that those people, those holy men, those holy women, they have to be people of color.
Right.
They have to be. You can't be kissed of the sun all day long for centuries and not show up with a whole lot of melanin. And so depending on how the questions are asked, depending on how the poll is taken, sometimes people are doing a poll and they have images floating while the poll is happening.
Right.
And
yes, sir.
If you're seeing pictures of Yeshua or Jesus, right? As a European, again, a lot of young people, they're done. They're not even in the conversation anymore. They're like, whoever you are, you're not serious. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm out.
That's true. And that's one of the big things, Pastor, that people have to see themselves in a divine light to even order to accept divinity into their lives. Like if you don't show them, and I think you're spot on, for young people in particular, I knew when I was growing up, when I was younger, it was like, it has to make sense to me.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? Like my faith, and I take my faith as a very personal thing. Some people, they use their faith and that's, they wear it on their sleeve. I think faith is, it's however, it could be a personal expression.
Yeah.
So you may not know my faith, quote unquote. I mean, my name says it all.
Right. Yes, sir. That's clear. That's clear.
But it still means that, I think for everybody, whether you're Christian, Muslim, you're a Jew, whatever your faith may be, you have all of these misperceptions. And I find that the journey to becoming one with your creator, one with the divine, that's a very, very intimate journey that many people either don't want to really speak on, or they just you know, they like I said, they just kind of wear it on their sleeve, and they want you to know. They kind of start the conversation with their faith.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, Pastor, that we're at this place. We had just a couple of the segments before you came on. You know, we're in a place like this weekend. There was the Poor People's March that happened in Washington, D.C. that called for the moral revival.
Yes, sir.
And I'm seeing right now, and Jules, you can jump in on this too, bro. Like what I'm seeing is this country, we really don't respect God. I mean, we gotta say it for what it is. As much as we say, you know, I know back in the day, I don't know if they still do this now. They made us stand up in school at the beginning of the day. And they say, oh, you got to say your pledge of allegiance, put your hand over your heart.
Yeah.
And the words are beautiful. But the expression of that pledge is dirty.
Hey man, when I was growing up, like I remember back in the 4th grade, I said to all my classmates, I'm like, when it comes time at the end of class, right? At the end of class, you got to sing the Pledge of Allegiance. You got to say the Pledge of Allegiance or sing that song, right?
Right.
And I said, I was in 4th grade. I was 9 years old. I said, let's don't do it. And my classmates.
Oh no, I didn't. My parents taught me the same thing.
They said, why not? I said, well, you know, early in the song, I'm kind of okay with it, but when it gets to that last part where it says "land of the free," I'm like, well, we're not free. They're bothering us all the time. They're limiting us all the time. So we just didn't do it. So the teacher was shook up. But anyway, but just coming back real quick to something you said a minute ago, and I've been saying this for many years. Young people, man, are into, and this is a broad statement. Young people, they're real clear about spirituality, but they're not into religiosity. Okay. They're not really sweating. A whole lot of them are not sweating. Are you Baptist? Are you Methodist? Are you Roman Catholic? Are you Spanish Catholic? And even, you know, right now it's like, are you in Islam? Are you in the Hindu thing? Are you in a Buddhist thing? Are you in a New Age thing? They're spiritual. So they're into the unseen, that is supreme, that is loving, that is good, that gives us power. But they're not necessarily really interested in attaching themselves to structures, right, that are defined.
And you know what, Pastor, if you can, I want to put a quick pause because we got to take a quick break.
Yes,
but when we come back, I want you to share with us what are the pros and cons of being in that space.
Okay, yes, sir. All right.
You know, given the fact that we're also, like I said, we're in a country where conversations about morality is had on the outside, but the expression and the respect is not there for. And
I love the question. I love to link that up. Yes, sir. I appreciate
sir. Absolutely. So, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more with Pastor Dr. Cecil Gray, more with Jules P., and more of this conversation about American adults and young people believing less in God. Share your comments, post your thoughts, and we'll get to those as well. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
What, 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God.
Folks, we have been talking about America and faith, as the new Gallup poll has shown that American adults and young people have lost faith in God, saying that they believe less, even though a number of them also said that their more spiritual, organized religion seems to be on the chopping block. Talking about this, and we've been joined by Dr. Cecil, Pastor Dr. Cecil Gray, who serves as the pastor for the Northwood Uphold United Methodist Church, and we also are talking to Culture Crew member Jules P. I want to get back to the conversation, but I don't want to miss out on some of the insight that our audience, our watchers are sharing on our platform. So I want to just share just a couple of those comments as folks have been checking in to share their thoughts about this. Davey Floater, Davey, good to hear from you, sir. Davey posted, look, I'm surprised it ain't lower than 81%. Yeah, 81%, folks. And you're talking about the number of U.S. adults who believed in God has dropped. So it's down 81%, 7%. It used to be close to, it was around 90% a few years ago. Now it's down to 80%. And folks are worried about this. The church and faith institutions across this country should really be trying to figure out how to make God more relatable. Rashida said, you can go to online church. They're very good ones to watch. And I think to your point, Jules, you talked about, watching those churches, having those church services and connecting with a faith institution, your church, through technology. You know what I mean? Using the technology, and especially because of COVID, that's changed everything. So Rashida, I agree with you. You just got to find the one that speaks the message that is going to edify you. And I think that's one of the big challenges. Doreen checked in and says, please don't believe all of these Gallup polls because they are not really true. They may not be, but I think it's interesting. I do think that it is interesting because I don't know about you, brothers, but I'm not the country, the way the country is, Jules, I don't see a lot of people running like, back in the day, Sundays, things used to be shut down. People used to, it used to be a time where, you go to the mosque, you go to the church, you go to your house of worship, and you could feel like less people on the road. Nobody was going shopping until after a certain period of time. Now Sundays don't feel the same. They don't feel the same. So I don't know. Like I'm more inclined, Doreen, to believe that people are just not going to church. And when you talk to people, I think this is the biggest indicator for me, Jules and Pastor. When you talk to people, the conversation is less about God. And it doesn't always have to be like, you every other word, God. But I'm talking about even when we're having conversations about the state of affairs in this country, when we're talking about issues, the element of bringing God into the conversation is often not brought up. Jules, what's your take on that, bro?
So my take is here's the point I want to tie together, especially, and I want to definitely talk to Pastor as well, because when we look at the state of this country and we talk about everything that's been going on, and we base everything off of like these mass shootings and everything that's just happened over the last, let's say 2-3 years, well, we'll say 6 years, and we talk about the Constitution was written way back when. So then let's tie that same correlation to our religion and our faith. A lot of our books, our Bibles, what we use to read our word and our literature was written a long time ago. So how does the correlation now in 2022 get the young people who are living in this time and age, seeing what's going on in these spaces of world mass shootings, war, poverty, economic decline? How do young people now use the faith that was passed down from their ancestors and from their grandparents and grandmothers and grandfathers and parents? How do they use that faith now to tie to the correlation of 2022, where they feel like, hey, I still have my belief in God, I still follow his ways, and I still use his teachings to live my life on a daily basis when that's not what I'm being shown on a consistent basis in America today.
Yeah. Good point. Pastor, how do you, and I got a couple of questions around this. First and foremost, when people often say, well, I don't go to church, or, and again, this is no shade. I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, sir.
When
Yes, sir.
people get to a place where they're like, no, I just, I'm spiritual.
Right.
Does that absolve them from taking the hard, necessary steps? Does that absolve?
Yeah.
Does that take some level of accountability out of the conversation? So if a person treats you wrong, you'd be like, well, I'm spiritual. I didn't say I was, I don't have to. I don't have to adhere to certain tenets of a faith. Does that put us in that space when we say that?
I think I'm gonna be very direct because I appreciate the question, because it's a complex time right now. It's complex.
Yeah.
Things are shifting. Let me. I'm gonna try to give an illustration and come back. Almost every young person, Africans, Europeans, Asians, you name it, you name the community. Almost every young person keeps up with musicians, right? Certain musicians, certain movie stars, right? Certain athletes, right? When Kanye goes to lunch, all the young people across the planet know where he went to lunch, right? So, and when Kanye gets a divorce, the young people and the rest of us, we know that, right? When so-and-so gets a divorce, when so-and-so has a baby, when so-and-so is cheating on so-and-so, and so-and-so is sleeping with so-and-so, all of that confusion, right? And all of that complexity is played out in real time. 5 minutes ago, it just happened. That makes it very hard. Watch this. I'm a young person. I aspire to a decent life, a good life. And what's put in front of them right now, I did a thing a few weeks ago. I said, so I said, is Kanye, Nipsey Hussle, and Tupac, are they prophets for a new day? Is it now the case that entertainers, right, are taking the place of Malcolm, Mr. Malcolm, Dr. King, because when you look at the religio spiritual leadership, right, generally, I think, and this is generalization. This means we're talking about things in large terms, so we know there's some variation, but right now, a lot of the spiritual leaders, their lives look just like everybody else's lives. And so it's very hard. Why should I go to church when the pastor is as far away from the teachings of the Quran, of the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita? If the spiritual facilitators, the spiritual servant leaders, if they're as far away from these tenets as the brother on the street who doesn't claim that, then what's the point? And so there's a thing on those of us who are understood as pastors, imams, babalaos, rabbis, leaders in the temple. We got to think about how we live in. It's always been so. Part of why people, and I'm gonna stay with me. Part of why people loved Malcolm, and part of why people didn't know what to do with Malcolm. Because when he had this experience that he had with the divine, with Allah, something happened.
Right.
And there was an undeniable transformation.
Right.
And here's what you can do. You can lie on somebody that's living right. You can lie on them, but you can't do nothing with them because they live right.
Right.
Okay. And when you live right, man, your friends, you find out you have very few friends. You find out you have very few. When you're really by the help of the source, by the help of the divine, when you're not cheating, you're not tricking, you're not embezzling, you're not out hustling, you're not killing nobody, you're not giving orders for somebody to get killed, you ain't drugging on the side, you ain't an alcoholic in the closet. When your life really lines up with these teachings, i.e., watch this: love, treat everybody right, look out for widows and widowers, look out for children.
Yeah.
Dr. King used to say this. He said, I don't know about the furniture in heaven. You're talking about gold streets, you have gold streets. They have pearly gates and he's in mansions. Dr. King said, I don't know about the furniture in heaven nor the temperature of hell. Because you're going to hell, you're going to burn in hellfire, you're going to burn up forever. Dr. King said, I don't know about the furniture of heaven, nor the temperature of hell. But this is what I do know about. Somebody needs a new pair of shoes. Somebody needs decent housing. Somebody needs a real job. Somebody needs an education that's going to prepare them for this century as it is and as it's coming. Okay. And so when that's happening, when that's the case, when you're teaching and you're preaching is relevant, and when you're living it is good. And if you're living good, don't be condescending. Don't be haughty. Don't play this puritanical, pristine, think like I'm so good. If the Creator is merciful to let you be able to lay down at night in peace and wake up in the morning in peace and strength, and you didn't have to do a drug, you didn't have to do a joint. If that happens for you, then walk with humility, because it ain't you, Doc. It ain't you. If life is good, if your living lines up with the teachings, that ain't you. That's grace. That's mercy. That's blessings. That comes from the source. A brother said this the other day. PhD, a double PhD, brother. Somebody said, so explain to us how, when you get in an accident and your body gets well, give us the scientific. He said, what y'all want me to say? Stay with this is a double PhD who's also a spiritual man. Watch this. He said, y'all want me to say that, well, the cellular structure and the DNA and the molecules did this, and the blood pressure did that. He said, I could tell you that. He said, but here's the thing. He said, when you get hurt and your body starts healing, he says it's because God says so.
Come on.
He said, when you he said, what people say, why does water cure thirst? And people say, well, it's H2O molecules, hydrogen, carbon. He said, no. He said, water cures thirst because Allah says so. That's why God says so. So if your life is good, if you got some peace, if you got enough money, if you living okay, that's the grace. That's God. That's the grace. But coming to the young people, I think they got to be careful, and we got to see we got to work with that. And I got a little answer for that. I'm spiritual, and so that can be an escape hatch from having to try to live right.
Right.
Because if you just go with I'm spiritual and you don't want to have anything to do with a teacher or a community, right? That gives you a whole lot of freedom, a whole lot of flexibility, but it also gives you no accountability, right? And if I'm going to raise a baby, I got a daughter. See, I got a daughter, right? And so my thing was, it was very clear to me. I got to do all the stuff that I've ever taught in the classroom, all the stuff I've ever preached in the pulpit. Right now, it's showtime.
Right.
If I don't want you to smoke, drug, and drink, I can't smoke, drug, and drink. If I don't want you, excuse my language, man. If I don't want you to be, I'm gonna fix it. If I don't want you to be a ho, I can't be a ho. Okay. I mean, and so you got it. But here's the thing: when you do that, you get respect. You get respect. And watch, here's the rest of it. Love, Doc. Love. The way I work with young people, my thing with young people, I love you. I love them, Doc. And people are like, well, you need to be, you need to tell them about the hellfire sometime. You need to tell them they're going to hell on a speedboat. Look at this world, yo. They see a speedboat all day, every day. Right. Something you need to tell them that you are divine. Divinity is in you. You are made in the image of source. You are made in the image of God. It is imprinted indelibly within your being. Now come on up to it, and I'll help you with it. I'll hug you. I'll affirm you. And I'll walk with you. And when you fall down, I'm gonna say, hey, come on. What can we do to get on track? It's real. It's corny, but it's real, man. And I don't have time to tell you stories, but I can tell you some stories about millionaire college people who were getting ready to go into all kinds of money. And I can tell you about anonymous people down on the block. But I won't, unless you push me for an illustration.
No, that's all good. That's all good.
But when you love people, Doc, they get better, they get stronger, and your next thing you know, they say, I think I'm gonna go read that Quran. I think I'm gonna go look at that Bible. I think I'm gonna come see what's going on with what y'all doing. But you got to live it, and you got to love.
A pastor, it goes back to what I think all of us have heard when parents used to tell us. Remember, Jules, when parents say, "Do as I say, not as I do."
No, they got it wrong, man. They got it.
And now that I, as an adult, as a parent, I'm like, man, that's wrong as hell. You can't say that to no one. You can't say that to no young person. You know what I'm saying? Because the authenticity comes in you doing what you say that you believe in. That's the consistency. That's the oneness that we are all seeking, right? The hypocrisy comes when you espouse certain ideals or you espouse certain values, but you don't live up to them. You telling your daughter as a mother, you're like, no, girl, don't you keep yourself pressed and primmed, and you keep yourself, you know, don't just give yourself away to any old man that come or little boy. And then as the mother, you out on. You telling the son
that consistency, man. That consistency.
Don't be in the street.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't smack on women.
That's right.
But then he sees you and your relationship with his mom or his girlfriend or whoever, and you talking about, man, you walk in and you hear your pop talking about, man, these bees up in
Yeah.
And children take, and you know, we all know children take that all in. They may not say it, but they're watching
all the time.
All the time. Man, let me go to some more of the to some more of these comments right now, because people are checking in, and they're really, I think a lot of people are excited about this idea. Janae, let's go to Janae. Janae checked in and said, not surprised by the young adults. They are so easy to sway or go with the trend, and God is also passed down, and that part is happening less. We are not teaching, and Janae, I appreciate you, sis. Thank you so much. And I think to the point of her that she got, we have as parents, and this is the hard part. As parents, you have to instill a love for God to your children. But if you can't instill something that you don't have yourself, if you have no spiritual foundation,
come on, Doc.
And this is why I tell people all the time, Jules and Pastor, I always say, like, okay, you could be whatever, but you got to have a spiritual foundation from somewhere.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
You can't just go out and just be like, well, my spiritual foundation is the stars.
Because you're going to find out when difficulty hits. When difficulty hits, that's when you find out what you got. You could be spiritual all day long, but when your mother makes transition, your grandmother makes transition, your daddy, your granddaddy, your uncle, when somebody makes transition, when somebody completes this journey, right? When somebody's in a bad car accident, somebody gets sick, whatever. At that point, you get ready to find out what you got.
That's what it is. I heard a joke that, you know, there was an atheist on a plane next to the Christian. The plane was going through some turbulence. The Christian praying. The atheist is saying, "Oh God."
Yeah, everybody started calling it that.
Right. When you're in trouble,
yeah.
And this is the part about it. And Jules, jump in, bro. Like the natural response when we in deep water in our personal lives or outside circumstances, you ain't praying to yourself.
No, sir. No, I mean, and that's where the organized systems, when they're authentic and when the leadership is authentic, they can be helpful. It's hard, man. It's hard because everybody's blinded. It's not just young people. So many people in the church, out of the church, in the mosque, out of the mosque. You name it, in the temple, out of the temple. So many people are chasing shiny objects. So many people are chasing, it used to be you want to have a car. You want to have a car that's dependable. Now, Alexis ain't even good enough no more. You're looking for a Bentley. And that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's not sustainable. And most of all, that's not even real.
Absolutely.
That's not real, man. And so when the pastors and the spiritual facilitators and leaders, when the holy men and holy women, so-called supposedly, when their lives look just like the lives of people who didn't make those claims, so the question comes down. Let's get real. Are you a pastor? Are you an imam? Are you a rabbi? Are you an entertainer? And if you're an entertainer, that's okay. But just go ahead and go to Hollywood. Go, go somewhere and do that. But don't play God as your hustle. Don't play Allah as how you pull women and get on TV and get on magazine covers. Come on, yo. And brother Farajii, you've been knowing me a long time. And people have approached me before I ever came to know you. And since then, if I wanted to play it a certain way, I could. But I'm serious about the walk, man. I'm serious about the journey. I'm serious about the journey. And then people don't like you because you're serious about the journey.
Hey, look. My pastor, my minister taught me. He taught me something that I will never forget. I was talking to him and just sharing some personal trials. And he said, brother, do you think that ministers and pastors and those who teach the word, do you think that we live a carefree life? I said, no, sir. He said, do you know that it is actually those of us who stand before the people that are the most tried? I said, man.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that changed my whole dynamic of what it meant to be a minister, to do the great work of ministering. That some of us, and you this is what I think you're pointing out, and I think it's important, that some of us tend to look as if being the pastor, the minister, has this special protection, right? But when we look at those great figures in the Bible or the Holy Quran, the servants of God gone through the most fire.
Cause Doc,
Jesus
women
went through the most.
Women
through the most.
money.
I mean, when you're talking about these servants, Moses, Abraham, when you're talking about servants of God, they go through the most fire, yet they are the beloved of God. All right, man, y'all gonna have me preaching up here, man.
You're doing it.
Come on, man. I know
you say Farajii, Muhammad. You don't want to say minister. It's all right.
All right, let me just get a couple more in here. Let me hear from Damon Blissett. Damon, good to hear from you, brother. My man checking in from Kansas City. I think Damon traveling right now, he said. But he said he's a pastor. He started his live stream worship service during the pandemic. He said, what I hear when we say organized religion is Americanized religion.
Mm.
Woo!
Mm.
Woo! I agree with you. I agree with you on this one. Thank you, Damon, for checking in. Dizzle, good to hear from you, Dizzle. Dizzle said, not surprised people, especially younger people, are turning away from religion when you see politicians exploiting it for political gains, and the better voices of it aren't getting to some attention, the same attention. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think that is something, that's the culture of American politics. We want our... Let me ask y'all this question very quickly. Just really quickly. How are you going to say you want your president, your council person, your congressperson to be a spiritual person when we separate church from state in this country? How does that make sense? You want them to go to church. You want them to be the spiritual person, but the very construct of our government says that we must separate church from state. So, and Jules, and then once the spiritual person gets into the government, then what? Look at how they are ostracized. And I'm talking about particularly when you see black people, like you Pastor, I'm sure you've had this experience. You know, somebody say, Pastor, can you open us up in prayer, to the government meeting, right? You open them up in prayer. Thank you, Pastor. Now you can leave. We want God to be here on the front side, but when we're making the deals and having the really important conversation, we don't need no God around.
One thing, brother, I appreciate Reverend Barber and the work that they're doing. Years ago, a lot of young people might not know this, but years ago, some people use the term the moral majority. And so it's a beautiful thing to hear about a moral revival, because that moral majority, that was kind of like what was said a minute ago. They were really talking about a white American power agenda and putting it under the framework of we love Jesus, right? And that was Jerry Falwell and all those folks. But what I love about Reverend Barber and what he and the young people are doing, a moral revival, because again, you got to do right. You got to do right. If you want a healthy world, you got to be healthy. If you want a sane country, you got to do sanity, right? And so you can't get away from the work of the 1960s, of the 1860s. People got to have food. People got to have decent money. People got to have a house. People got to have transportation. And when you speak to those things, watch this. When I'm okay, I don't have to do crime. When I'm okay, when I got a job that pays enough to have a life, enough to take a spouse, to have a spouse if that's what we want to do, enough to have children. If my work generates that kind of money, and it should, every kind of work should generate that kind of money, right? Now I don't need to do crime. Now I ain't stressing. I ain't scheming. I don't have to trick no women. I don't have to trick no men. I got enough money to be at peace, to take care of the things that need to be taken care of. Now I can go out. I'm healthy. Now I can go try to find somebody else that's healthy, and we can see, can we be healthy together? So there's a master plan to create. Y'all, I don't know if y'all remember this, brother. I'll stop real quick. Leon Thomas talked about in Pharaoh's Sons. They said the Creator has a master plan.
Yes, sir.
Peace and happiness for every man and woman, we should say, right? But see, the challenge is some others have a master plan, and it is diametrically opposed to the Creator's master plan. Okay, some others got a master plan, and that is to keep you struggling, to keep you not having right health care, to keep you working too many hours so you get sick, to keep you having a crazy diet. On the way to school, you eating potato chips and a soda. When you get to school, you can't be still. You can't be still. Now you in trouble. You can't concentrate. Now you're getting a bad grade. Now you're graduating with your D, you're going straight to the worst paying job. That's a master plan, but it ain't from the divine. That's a master plan, and they play it all the time. And some of the work that I do is we break that all the way down, and we try to show young people and older people, here go the trick, and here goes the response. Here go how we overcome the trick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pastor, we don't have, we're at that place, but, I truly appreciate you for being a part of this conversation. Jules is just taking it all in. So I get that. He's just taking it all in, but I truly appreciate that, because, and one of the folks that checked in on, they say, well, Farajii, if 81% of the people still believe in God, why are we having this conversation? Which I think is a valid discussion. 81 is a high number of folks. However, we're having a conversation because we're seeing people slipping away in a very short period of time. And especially among the next generation, there was a 10 percentage point drop among young people, liberal Democrats. So if that's happening in a short period of time, what will happen over the next 2 years, the next 5 years? We shouldn't get concerned when it's at a crisis point. We should be concerned now, because I don't think any one of us wants our children to grow up with no moral foundation, no sense of divine connection. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much at stake. And I think more importantly, we don't talk about our relationship with God in a very open space and in a very understanding way. Look, I'm a Muslim. It doesn't matter whether you Christian, Jewish, Zoroastrian, Hindu. It don't matter.
That's right.
It doesn't matter, because we in America right now, and the situations that are facing this country will make you question, is God real? You see what I'm saying? Like, and I know every one of us, all of you that are watching, you are asking all of these crises, is God really real? Is he present? Because I don't want to sound like I'm a disbeliever, but we going through a lot right now.
God is real, Doc. God is real. We teach something: history, culture, and spirituality. That's the thing. That's called the Rites of Passage, Shule Oasis Phoenix. History, culture, and spirituality. If you know how to teach those three things, you know how to synthesize those three things: history, authentic history, real, honest culture, and spirituality. And when I say spirituality, the work that I do, and you already know this, brother, I honor Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, the Navajo, the Kumse, the Sioux, Buddhism. I honor all systems, right? Ancient Kemetic philosophy. You know, that's part of my work, right? I honor all the systems, right? And so it is good to have a system. This is back for the young people. It's good to lock down somewhere. Get in Islam. You know, get over here. Get in something for yourself. Read that book, make your prayers, ask the source, ask the divine to give you revelation, not only through the teacher, not only through the imam, not only through the pastor. Ask the source to give you revelation, because it will, to show you the way. Because you look up and you look up, you do that with all of your heart and with all of your mind, with all of your being and all your soul. You ask the Creator to show it to me and to enable me. You go for that the same way you go for that Gucci bag, the same way you go for all of other bags. You go to the source like that, and you'll see some things. Your life will change. It'll get better. And then when the imam falls off and the pastor falls off, when the whoever falls off, hey, they still human beings. They fell off. You stay. Kanye got this right. He said, people say, I don't want to have nothing to do with no church. I don't have nothing to do with all of that because the people ain't right. And Kanye said, he said, you trying to judge the Creator. I'm paraphrasing. I ain't got it just right. You judging the Creator based off of the people, off of human beings. If you're going for the Creator, go for the Creator. Don't sweat these human beings because they ain't got it all the way. Go for the Creator and get that thing with yourself, in yourself, you and God, and go ahead and do good in the world.
There it is. Pastor Dr. Cecil Gray, pastor of the great Northwood Appold United Methodist Church. Pastor, thank you so much for your time and being with us today to have this very important conversation. Yes, sir. You're welcome, dear brother. Thank you. Folks, man, oh man, that was a great conversation. Jules, I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. I know you were just kind of soaking it up. You were a little student today, Jules.
I got the chance to listen for 2 segments. That was dope. Listening to the Pearson brothers and then listening to pastors, like, you know, that gives me an opportunity. I tell everybody, you know, my goal every day is to learn something new and to teach, because there's no point in me learning it and keeping the information for myself. So I learn information every day and I'm passing on to either somebody at work, somebody more on the way to work, whether I'm going to the mall, the barbershop. That's how you live and progress life.
There it is. There it is. And sometimes, you know, and I know we often, you know, some people say, well, we just talk about politics, but life is encompassed, is made up of so many different parts. And so we can't have a conversation about culture and just talk about culture of politics, culture of healthcare and education and all of those. If we don't have even a conversation about the culture of our faith, the culture of how we believe, right? The culture of the things that are quote unquote outside of our control. And so, you know, even if the conversation doesn't hit the mark for some of you, that's okay. But we need to have a conversation when it comes to the intangibles, the things that we believe, the value system, everything, because that's how we're going to grow. That's how we're going to grow. Jules P., Mr. Jules P., thank you so much, brother, for being so good for the culture today.
I appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I thank each and every one of you for being a part of the Cultural Conversations. Big shout out to the Culture Crew, my online crew. Man, always bringing some great insights. So many of you have been checked in. And today, I hope you really gained something from these conversations. And this is why we ask you for your continued support here at Black Star Network. Make sure you go to our website, blackstarnetwork.com. Support us. Give whatever you can. Share whatever you like to share. But most importantly, continue to show your support for Black-owned media that is truly about you, that's unadulterated, unfiltered, and of course, unapologetically Black. So you can find us at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next is Brother Roland Martin at the 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time moment. But as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition and another set of conversations right here on The Culture, found exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon, family. Peace.
iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. To show the love.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.